Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Machiavelli's Discourses. We are looking today at, we're continuing book 1 of the Discourses and looking at today chapter 7 of the Discourses, which the title is How Far Accusations May Be Necessity in a Republic to Maintain Its Freedom. In other words, this is the question. He's continuing the theme of the issue of, okay, if you're going to have to make a great republic or a Republican thing and keep it free, he brought in a couple of issues, chapters earlier, the tribunate and as the way to check the Senate, in other words, the people's ability to check the grade. And then the idea here is that the right of the tribunate was the idea of the right to make accusations, right? So therefore the question is whether how far accusation may be necessary, particularly in a Republican form of government, to maintain its freedom. So let's look at this. This is going to be, I think there's going to be at least three, maybe 4 paragraphs. So let's go through it. 1. Those who are posted in a city to guard of its freedom cannot give a more useful and necessity authority than that of being able to accuse citizens to the people or to some magistrate or council when they sin in anything against the free state. Okay, the republic and the people, the political body, the body politic, the free people. In other words, if they sin against, make it harm or do something bad against this. In other words, you need to have guards of its freedom. Cannot give more useful and necessary authority of that being able to accuse a citizen to the people, or to a magistrate, or to a council. So people, magistrate, council, right? This order produces 2 very useful effects for a republic. The first is that for fear of being accused, citizens do not attempt things against the state. And when attempting them, they are crushed instantly and without respect. In other words, everyone's fearful. In other words, this state, that if you do anything against the thing, we want to report you. We're going to report you. We're going to crush you. And if you dare do anything, you will be crushed you will be crushed instantly without respect. In other words, it's one is that it uses fear to prevent those to act. And at the same time, it's designed so that if someone does act, the citizens can denounce and attack, and they can be easily crushed, right? And without respect. The other is that an outlet is given by which to vent in some mode against some citizens, those humors that grow up in cities, and when these humors do not have an outlet by which they may be vented orderly, they have recourse to extraordinary modes that can bring a whole republic to ruin. In other words, he says, in a republic, in a big, large city, in a republic, there's going to be humors. Now, the humors, these are the kind of humors are kind of the emotions, the emotions and the kind of backlashes and things, suspicions and fears and things like this. All of the kind of non-rational aspects that will arise in a republic. And if you don't give what he says you need to have a way that these humors are vented. You need to have in other words, they need to have an outlet, an outlet, an established outlet that they are able to vent their humors. The humors that their fears, their anger, their resentment, all these things are able to be vented. Because if they don't, if there's not an ordinary means, in other words, vented ordinarily, If they have, in other words, otherwise they'll have recourse to extraordinary modes. In other words, things that are not designed, not there. It's extraordinary, and that these will bring down ruin a republic. That will bring a whole republic to ruin, he says. So there is nothing that makes a republic so stable and steady as to order it in a mode so that those altering humors that agitate it can be vented in a way ordered by its laws. In other words, now in America you can argue that it's lawsuits, disputes, anger, fights, disputes. You can do it through the courts. Now we're having problems with that because it's taking in other words, if you have fights and disputes, this is the way this is what was designed. The Anglo-Saxon common law, it was designed to allow that this is the agitations and the angers and the disputes that happen can take place, and all slanders, the things like this. All of these things could be dealt with by the courts, and therefore this is how you maintain freedom in that sense, right? This is one aspect of it, right? He says, an orderly, this can be demonstrated by many examples, and especially by that of Coriolanus, which Titus Livy brings up, right? There he says that the Roman nobility had become too much angered against the plebs because the plebs appeared to have too much authority through the creation of the tribunes who defended. Meanwhile, Rome, as it happened, had come into a great scarcity of provisions, and the Senate had sent for grain in Sicily. Coriolanus, enemy of the popular faction, counseled that the time had come when, by keeping it famished and not distributing the grain, they could punish the plebs and take away from it the authority that it had taken to the prejudice of the nobility. When that judgment came to the ears of the people, it aroused such indignation against Coriolanus that he emerged from the Senate. They would have killed him in atonement had the tributes not summoned him to appear to defend his cause. On this incident, one notes what is said above, how far it may be useful and necessity that republics give an outlet for the laws to vent their anger, that the collectivity conceives against one citizen. For when these ordinary modes are not there, one has recourse to extraordinary ones. And without doubt, these produce much worse effect than the former. In other words, but the problem with Coriolanus, that's even more so. What happens is that Coriolanus that goes, the Coriolanus of Shakespeare is different from the Coriolanus of, even the Coriolanus of Livy does what? He goes to his enemy and the enemy of Rome, and then becomes its tool to easily crush the Romans. And the only thing that saves Rome is not the tributes, not that, but Coriolanus' mother, right? And that's the difference between, let's say, a Caesar and a Coriolanus. Coriolanus could not slap his mother. Caesar dreamed, famous Caesar before he crossed the Rubicon said he slapped his mother, right? Dreamed he slapped his mother. And therefore, this is a perception of this. Therefore, this is something he says. This is why the order, in some ways, when he thought we could stop the tributes. The Coriolanus case is a very interesting one because at one time he really despises the people in that sense, but he doesn't understand that he needs the people. This is the odd aspect of it. So therefore, this is the vent of this, right? 2, for if a citizen is crushed ordinarily, there follows little or no disorder in the republic, even though he has been done a wrong. Right? If it's done ordinarily, something like this. For the execution is done without private forces and without foreign forces. which are the ones that ruin a free way of life. In other words, private forces, the private warriors, private things, or in other words, as long as everything is done by the law, everything is done publicly through the means of the public system. If one is crushed, yes, he's harmed, but it won't destroy the republic in this sense. It won't destroy the political orders. It's when private things or foreign forces, which are the ones that ruin a free way of life, but it is done with the public forces and orders, the laws, right, the rules, which have their particular limit and do not lead beyond to some that may ruin the republic. In other words, as long as the laws do not have limited, in other words, the things that can be done, but they don't lead to something that will ultimately ruin it. In other words, you have to be careful. The orders cannot be those. The orders that are done or done cannot lead to something that will ultimately ruin the republic. As to collaborate, as to collaborating this opinion, I wish this example of Coriolanus to suffice among the ancient ones, concerning which everyone may consider how much ill would have resulted to the Roman Republic if he had been killed in a tumult. For from that arises offenses by private individuals against private individuals, which offenses generate fear. Fear generates defense. For defense, they procure partisans. From partisans arise parties in the city. From parties, there are ruin. In other words, he describes the structure. In other words, you. In other words, instead of doing the instruments of the state do it, private actors do it. Well, I fear those private actors. I then act against those private actors. And then what happens is what he says. There's a cycle. In other words, offense against private individuals, which offense generates fear. Fear, then I'll defend myself. For those defenses that occur, to defend myself, I occur allies or people help me, partisans. From partisans arise parties, the factions, in that sense, of parties or factions. And then from factions or parties, the city falls, right? The republic is fallen. But since the affair was governed through whoever had authority for it, all those ills came to be taken away that could have arisen if it were governed if they were executed or governed by private authority. 3. We have seen in our times what innovations have been done to the Republic of Florence, because of the multitude was unable to vent its animus ordinarily against one of its citizens, as it happened at a time when Francisco Valeri was like a prince in the city. He was judged by many to be ambitious, a man whom with his audacity and spiritedness wished to pass beyond a civil way of life, and there being no way in the Republic to resist him except with a sect contrary to his. It came about that since he had no fear except of extraordinary modes, he began to get supporters to defend him. On the other side, since those who oppose him had no ordinary means to repress him, they sought extraordinary means, extraordinary ways, until they came to arms. If one had been able to oppose him ordinarily, his authority would have been eliminated with harm to him alone. But since he had to be eliminated extraordinarily, there followed harm not only to him, but to many other noble citizens. They came in, those who sided with him. They had to be killed as well. They had to be harmed as well. Next paragraph. One could cite in support of the conclusions written above the incidents that also occurred in Florence against Poderos Sardellini. Again, this is I think Machiavelli's, which occurred entirely because in that republic there was no mode of accusation against the ambition of a powerful citizen. Now, again, this is apparently the downfall of Machiavelli's employer, right? It's 1512. and again, this is going to be, the next note would be, okay, let's go. For to accuse one powerful individual before the 8 judges, now again, this is the Council of 8, the reference of Magistrate 8, responsible for administering of justice, right, the Council of 8. In other words, this is a reference to the 8 judges. To accuse one powerful individual before the 8 judges in a republic is not enough. The judges needed to be very many, because few always behave in such a mode of the few. Because the judges being few, they would behave side with the few. In other words, they'll side whoever. So, if such a mode had been there, either the citizens would have accused him if he were living badly, and by such means they would have vented their animus without having the Spanish army come. Or if he were not living badly, they would not have dared to work against him for fear of being accused themselves, right? And so from each side of the appetite that was the cause of the scandal would have ceased. In other words, example of that against that if he had a better means of accusation. In other words, the few, it was the problem of the judges. It wasn't a proper means to do this, so that he could be accused and that there was enough support. So if he had, in other words, if he had been badly, then he would have been. If he had been accused, if he had been badly, there was a means that they would vented an animus without having to bring the Spanish army in, right? And if he was not living badly, they would not have dared to do this because they feared of being accused themselves. So therefore, both sides would, in other words, the appetite that caused the scandal would have ceased, right? The fifth and final thing here. So one can conclude this. Whenever one sees that alien forces are called in by the party of men living in a city, one can believe it arises from its bad orders, because inside their walls there is no order. There no order abides, without extraordinary modes to vent the malignant humor that arise in men, for which one fully provides by ordering accusations, whereby before many judges, and giving reputations to them, these judges, right? In other words, you need a big body, not a small body, a big body that has great reputation, that you can bring the accusation before them, and therefore the people who would in other words, they're big enough to deal with the powerful. In other words, if they were just small judge, a small bunch, small limited, they're few, and therefore they could be easily intimidated or be brought in with the powerful could make them a part of the crowd. So therefore not allow for the venting of the animus against these people like this. So therefore this is why the example is of the words, they need to have many judges giving reputation to them. These modes were so well ordered in Rome that in so many decisions of the plebs in the Senate, never did the Senate or the plebs for any particular citizen plan to avail themselves of extraordinary forces. For having the remedy at home, they were not compelled of necessity to go outside for it. In other words, you didn't have to go outside. In other words, you had enough internal, ordinary means to address this. You didn't have to go to outside forces, outside people, outside actors to come inside. Although the example written above are very sufficient to prove it, nevertheless I wish to bring up another, recited by Titus Livy in the history. He refers to how in Chiusi, a very noble city in Tuscany in those times, a sister of Arunus was violated by one Lumeco. And since Arenos could not avenge himself himself because of the power of the violator. He went to the French, who were reigning in that place today. In other words, who were reigning in that place today called Lombardy. He urged them to come with arms in hand to Chelusi, showing them that they could avenge the injury received usefully to themselves, right? Again, this is interesting. This is, in other words, in Livy 5, it is where Arnis's wife, not his sister, who was involved, right? Injury received to themselves. If Arnis had seen that he could avenge himself through the modes of the city, he would not have sought out the barbarians. So Arnis could not revenge himself by the power of the violator, right? This Luhanko sister was violated by this guy. He's now some Livy says it's his wife, not his sister. Machiavelli makes it his sister, right? He then goes to the outside forces. Now, if he could have, in other words, he urged them to come in arms to do this. But if Arnis could see that he could avenge himself within the city, he would not have sought out barbarian forces. But as these accusations are useful in a republic, so calumnies are useless and harmful. So calumnies, like libels, in essence, are useless and harmful, as we shall discourse in the next chapter. So therefore, if accusations are doing it, false statements, calumnies, these are useless. So let's stop here. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. I appreciate if you do that. It would help. If you like the chapter, like what we did today, like the video, share it on social media, share it with your friends, share it far and wide. It helps the algorithm. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you encourage others to come and subscribe, it will help the channel, increase the attention to the channel. If you didn't like it, of course, you can always thumbs down it, but say why in the comments. This way people can benefit from it. We can know why you're doing it and what's going on here. And people can learn. This is the purpose of this, what we're doing here. Another thing you do is if you want to follow me on social media, the social media links are below. If you want to know more about me as a researcher and a scholar, the academic social media links are below those. And if you want to help me doing what I do, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar. The links to those, the URLs to them below, or you can do so through buying one of my books, either directly from a bookstore or by the publisher or through any of the online distributors. Okay, well that's it. Well, we'll look at the next chapter next, so have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.